Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm doing the book recommendation tag. This tag was created by Steph Bohr. I will link her video down below. I love book tags. I used to do them all of the time, but I feel like people just don't watch them anymore and nobody creates tags anymore. And so when Steph did this tag, I immediately wanted to do it. There are 15 questions, so I'm just gonna go ahead and jump into it. So the first question is a book you tell people is your favorite. I usually say Chasing the Moon by S.M. Soto is my favorite book. However, this book you can't really buy anywhere. And I don't really feel like I want to talk about this book all the time, even though it's my favorite book. The author was in a plagiarism scandal. She essentially copied books from other authors and stuff. I don't think it was this book. Obviously, I don't know for sure. This book could be a total copy of another book, but from what I know, it was some of her other books that she copied from other people. I kind of hate giving attention to this author, even though I absolutely love this book and it's my favorite book, but I usually say this is my favorite. However, I would also say that The Secret History by Donna Tartt is one of my favorite books. I feel like it is funny when you are talking to specific people and you're like, oh, they would not understand my love for romance, or like they wouldn't understand how much I love Chasing the Moon. So I would say The Secret History is my favorite book. I feel like also everybody has heard of this book. Everybody knows about this book. So I feel like in a way it would be very easy to be like, yeah, The Secret History is my favorite book. I mean, it is one of my favorite books. I do own 2 copies of this book, and it was like one of the first general fiction that I read. I was kind of reading YA at the time. I think I was starting to get more into romance, and this was definitely a different read for me, but I absolutely loved it. And I would love to do a reread at some point because it's been so long. But yeah, these are like my 2 favorite books on 2 very different spectrums. Number 2, a book that is your guilty pleasure. For this, I'm going to go with Real by Katie Evans. This is a very dramatic, insta-love, but like addicting, entertaining romance. It follows a like underground fighter, and our female character is a sports therapist, and they kind of have like a little bit of a toxic relationship, but I really love this book. I love this series. I also love like the spin-off of this book, and yeah, it's a guilty pleasure. I have read it multiple times. It's not, the best written romance in the world. It's not the healthiest relationship, but I do really love this book. Number 3, a book everyone loved but you didn't. For this, I have multiple ones. I'm going to kind of go fast with this. The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armaz. I just wasn't a fan of the writing, and I wasn't super in love with the characters or the romance. The Fine Print by Lauren Asher, also kind of same thing, wasn't into the romance or the characters or just the story in general. The only book I've actually liked by her so far is Throttled. Twisted Love by Ana Huang. This I also just wasn't a fan of the writing, the storytelling, the characters, the romance, and I never continued the series. I never have plans to continue it. I just wasn't into the first book enough to read the rest of the books. Also wasn't super into The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Kind of the same thing. Didn't love the characters, nor the romance, nor the writing. This was in third person. I typically don't enjoy romances told in third person. And then we also have Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman. I expected to really, really love this because it was hyped everywhere, and I just didn't care for the characters or the romance either. Number 4, a book you read the fastest. For this, I'm going to go with the entire Ice Planet Barbarian series by Ruby Dixon. This series is, I think, like 20 books. I'm pretty sure I just have the last book to read, but I devoured the series. I think I read this back in 2019, and I read this first book and I was so addicted. I just binged the entire series. I also read the spin-off series, and then I read, I think, Ruby Dixon's like dragon shifting apocalyptic romance as well. I just was so into this series, this world, these characters, Ruby Dixon's writing. I was just so addicted to it that I literally read the entire series in a month. Number 5, a book that deserves more hype. For this, I'm going to go with Monster in His Eyes by J.M. Darhauer. I love this trilogy so much. It is my second favorite series of all time. It is my favorite dark romance series. I just love this book so much. It deserves more attention. It deserves more hype, but also at the same time, I kind of want to gatekeep it. I kind of just want to keep it for myself. But then again, I want it to become super popular so I can get new covers. I don't like the covers in the series, and I really wish that the author would do like an anniversary edition or just get new covers, but I feel like it's criminal that I do not have this series in another edition. Like, it's so sad that I just have this one original edition. But I love this series. It is just so good. Ignacio is that man. I love him so much. Number 6, a book that is becoming a movie/TV show. For this, I have 2. One I have read, one I haven't read. My Lady Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brodie Ashton, and Jodie Meadows is becoming a TV show with Prime Video. I believe they're currently filming or they have wrapped. I'm not really sure. It's very like hush hush, but they've casted everybody and the TV show is supposed to come out sometime this year. Whenever we do get more news on this, I will definitely talk about it in my next adaptation video, but I'm very, very excited for the TV show. I just think it's going to be so fun and so good, and I really, really liked this book. It's like a YA historical romance. It's a fantastical, comical, romantical story of Lady Jane Grey. And then Wait With Me by Amy Dawes is becoming a movie on Passionflix. I have not read this book yet, but I am going to read the book and vlog my entire experience, and then I'm going to watch the movie and vlog that and review both of them in a video. I'm just very, very excited to read this and watch the Passionflix adaptation, which comes out March 30th. Number 7, a book you have reread the most. For this, I'm going to go with the Fallen Too Far trilogy by Abby Glines. The first book is Fallen Too Far, second book is Never Too Far, and then the third book is Forever Too Far. These are also the first 3 books in the Rosemary Beach series. It's like a trilogy within a series, essentially. I love these books so much. I have read this entire trilogy, I think 13 times. I mean, obviously they're super short, so you can literally fly through them. They're very addicting, very dramatic, very over the top. Back in the day, whenever I was feeling like I wasn't loving everything that I was reading and that I was maybe kind of in a slump, I would just pick up this series and reread it, and it got me back into the mood of loving books and loving reading. And I also just remember reading this series so fast. I absolutely love these books. Number 8, a book from a genre you don't typically read. I was trying to think of more like nonfiction, but the only one that I've read that I loved was The Glass Castle, and I don't really feel like recommending that one necessarily, even though I did really like it. But I wanted to stick with something more fiction, just a subgenre that I don't really read, which would be like mystery thrillers. I loved Gone Girl. This was so entertaining and so thrilling. I loved the writing. I loved the storytelling. I liked all of the different characters, and I mean, Amy's monologue of like the cool girl and stuff is just fantastic, and I really love Gillian Flynn. I think she is just amazing, and I think I've read everything that she's written, and this is definitely my favorite of hers. I really, really love this. Number 9, a book that deserves all the hype it gets. For this, I'm going to go with Marriage for One by Ella Mays. I had heard nothing but amazing things about this book, and I was really hesitant to read it, and I had read this, and for some reason I couldn't give it a 5 stars immediately when I finished it, but I just kept thinking about it for days, and I realized how much I loved it, and then I went back and gave it 5 stars. It was just everything I love in romances. It was slow burn. It was kind of friends to lovers, Grumpy Sunshine, Marriage of Convenience. You literally got to see the characters fall in love while just doing mundane, everyday type of things. I just loved their relationship, and I loved them as characters and the whole plot. It was pretty much like a perfect romance book. Number 10, a book you usually recommend when asked to give a recommendation. I was trying to think of one specific that I feel like I've recommended over and over again, and let me know if there's a book that you think I constantly recommend, but I'm gonna go with The Simple Wilds by K.A. Tucker. I feel like this is such a great book to recommend to everybody. It has a little bit of a romance, but it's not too overpowering for the plot, so I feel like people who aren't really into romance would still like this. It just covers grief and family issues so well, and I really liked the romance between Kella and Jonah and their whole development as characters as well. And I feel like the small town vibes were just so perfect. I absolutely love this book. It's one of my favorites of all time. Number 11, a book that has your favorite characters. For this, I'm going to go with the Addicted series by Kristen Becker Ritchie. I love the entire Addicted crew, the Addicted gang, the Core Six, and also Willow and Garrison. I read this series back in 2014 and it has still stayed with me. I absolutely love Lily, Lo, Rose, Connor, Reich, and Daisy. I love them so much, and they will forever always be my favorite characters. Number 12, a book you wish you could live in. For this, I'm going to go with The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. I just love this world. I love these characters. I think it's so interesting and fascinating. I also love Victorian England and just that era. I think it's so fascinating, and I feel like it would be so fun to live in that era, but also like live in this world of Shadowhunters. I absolutely love the series. One of my favorites YA series ever. 13, a book you thought you would hate but ended up loving. For this, I'm going to go with The Takeover by T.L. Swan. This is technically the second book in the Miles High Club series. This I read because I was doing a series where you guys would recommend books to me and I would read it for 3 months, and this was the book that you guys picked, and I honestly didn't think I would like it, but I absolutely loved it. I loved Tristan and Claire, and I loved their relationship. This follows a single mom, and I loved her boys. I loved the bond that Tristan made with them. It was funny, but it was also sexy and smutty, and just overall a really good book, and I'm really happy that you guys recommended this to me and that I ended up liking it. Number 14, a book that made you cry, The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This book, I sobbed. I loved this book so much. I have so many sticky tabs in here. This was my favorite book of last year. Probably going to be like one of my favorite books of all time. I definitely have to reread it to officially decide that, but I loved this book so much. It was so heartbreaking, but also heartwarming. I loved the characters. I loved the small romance. I loved Florence's family, and I loved the whole setting and vibe of this book. It was just genuinely so good. One of the best books I have ever read, and I highly, highly recommend it. I feel like more people need to read this. Just know that it's not fully a romance. Like, the romance takes kind of a back seat. This is mainly about Florence and her growth as a character and her grieving the loss of her father, and it's just so beautiful. Loved it. Number 15, a book you wish you could read for the first time. This one I'm cheating. I'm going to mention the Addicted series again. Like I said earlier, I read this series back in 2014 when I think Kiss the Sky had just come out. I believe I was waiting for Hot House Flower to come out. That was like the first book in the series that I was able to read on like release day. But I read this series when I was graduating high school, which was such an experience. I truly got to kind of grow with these characters and go through big life changes just as they were, and I felt so connected to these characters, and I honestly wish I could reread the series for the first time again. It's so crazy sometimes how you can read a book and you can really think like nothing of it when you're like starting to read it or when you're about to read it, and then it changes your whole life essentially. Like, your life is never the same again. That is how I feel about the series. So that was it for this book recommendation tag. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know some of your answers to these questions down below. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, follow me on all my other social media, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.